We are back with Congressman Tim Griffin, a Republican of Arkansas, sits on the Ways and Means Committee. Let's talk about Paul Ryan's budget that he unveiled yesterday. In it, it included a repeal of benefits under the Affordable Care Act. That unveiling comes as the president yesterday announced 7 million. They hit the target. Americans have signed up in this first enrollment period. I want to get your reaction to what the president had to say. What do you think?
Well, if you look at what the president had to say, the bottom line he said is that this has made health care better. That's not what I'm hearing in Arkansas. We have had numerous witnesses before, including the head of CMS, the head of Secretary Sebelius, HHS. And when we asked questions about the number of enrollees, they had no idea. They just could not provide us any information. So I don't know who the 7 million includes and who it doesn't. It doesn't surprise me, though, that when people are required to sign up, that they ultimately sign up. The problem with Obamacare is that instead of just addressing the people that needed access to health care, in the process of doing that, it messed it up for a bunch of other people. Doubled their premiums, et cetera. I was getting on a plane in Chicago last week, I think it was Thursday. And as I got on, the guy standing near the entrance to the plane where you leave your carry-on bags, he was grabbing the luggage and taking it down, putting it under the plane. And I guess he recognized a pen or something, and we started talking about what I do. And he said, well, hey, keep fighting in there. And I said, yeah, I don't agree with this president on a lot of stuff. And he said, man, my health care has doubled in cost. Now, this is a guy that I didn't know the guy, but I suspect that he's not getting rich doing the job that he's doing. And he's getting hit by this. And of this 7 million, the question is, how many of these people are ones that didn't have access to insurance in the first place? There's a study out today, I think that Forbes reported, says that maybe only a third of these people are people that didn't have health care in the first place. So what it looks like happened is the administration took away people's health care so they could get them to sign back up and claim credit for the success. That's ridiculous. At the end of the day, this is a Washington knows best. We're gonna organize it from Washington. We're gonna dictate it from Washington. We're gonna go top down. That's what this approach is, and fundamentally, that's the core problem here. Happy to talk more about it, but
well, let's hear what the president had to say yesterday at the White House, and we'll get to your reaction.
Why are folks working so hard for people not to have health insurance? Why are they so mad about the idea of folks having health insurance? Many of the tall tales that have been told about this law have been debunked. There are still no death panels. Armageddon has not arrived. Instead, this law is helping millions of Americans. And in the coming years, it will help millions more. I've said before, I will always work with anyone who's willing to make this law work even better. But the debate over repealing this law is over. The Affordable Care Act is here to stay.
Congressman Tim Griffin, he says the debate over repealing it is over. Paul Ryan's budget would repeal it, but doesn't replace it.
Sure. Lots to talk about there. Let me roll through some of these if I can. First of all, he says that people are mad, they are angry, they are against people having access to health care reform. That is completely ridiculous. In fact, I would go as far as saying the President of the United States is just unserious with a comment like that. That is best placed between the ferns or on Saturday Night Live. What he wants to posit is a false choice. And that false choice is Obamacare or nothing. And if you're not for Obamacare in his mind, this is all politics coming from him, but if you're not for his Obamacare, then you are for nothing. That is a false choice. There are many, 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 many different options. Now, ways to reform health care. We have several bills in the House, one by Chairman Tom Price, former chairman of the Policy Committee, who is a physician. The Republican Study Committee has a bill. There are over 200 health care-related bills. But let me just say this. He said something in that quote which he needs to be called out on. The president has said that he'll meet with anybody, do anything at any time to improve the law, to improve health care. He made that comment back, I think it was in December. I wrote a letter, and I got 33 of my colleagues to sign on to it. We did not talk about repealing anything in that letter, although I am for repealing Obamacare. That was not what the letter was about. The letter was about a number of things that we can do on health care. Expand the use of HSAs, competition across state lines, high-risk pools, etc. Number of things. And we sent that letter, and we said, Mr. President, you said you will meet with anybody, anytime. So we sent that letter in December. We gave the president till after Christmas, came back from Christmas, not one word from the White House on it. So then the president reiterated almost that exact same quote. That's a talking point. As part of the politics. Use that exact same quote in the State of the Union. Almost precisely the same quote. What did we do? We said, Mr. President, every day putting out a press release. Mr. President, it's been another day. We want to hear. We're now up to 113 days since he first made that offer. He made it again yesterday. I didn't see that he made it again, but he did. And I understand that as long as there's an individual with the last name Obama, that the president's not going to sign a repeal of Obamacare. I understand that. I have voted numerous times to repeal it. I understand that he's not going to sign that. But the bottom line is he has made this offer, but he's not been willing to meet with at least me or any of the other 34.
Let's talk about, in general, the budget proposal put out by Chairman Paul Ryan yesterday. He said it would save $5 trillion over 10 years. Most of those savings coming from repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Does it go far enough? Is that enough money, $5 trillion in savings?
Sure. I will support this budget. I've supported every one of them. I think the first question when someone introduces a budget is, what are the alternatives? The Senate doesn't have the budget. The president's budget, since I've been in Congress, has garnered either the exact budget or a form of it that was voted on the House or Senate. I think it's gotten a grand total of 0 votes. In combining the Democrat Senate and the Republican House, maybe 1 or 2 here or there. But as a general matter, the president's budget is not an option. This is a budget that we will pass. This is a responsible budget. And I heard some of the calls, people talking about this and that they don't like. I really believe that the worst thing we could do for folks who are struggling, the worst thing we could do for the job market, the worst thing we could do for this country is to say, well, you know what? Budgets don't matter. Let's just spend whatever it takes, and when things crash, they crash. Debt doesn't matter. That's what a lot of the folks that I heard calling in, it seems to me that's the only other alternative, because the amount of flexibility that we have, and I brought a little chart, the amount of flexibility that we have within the budget shrinks every year because what we call mandatory spending continues to grow. And I call it the Pac-Man problem because I have a Pac-Man chart. I don't know if...
yeah, they can see it.
Yeah.
Viewers can see it.
And that chart basically shows that the investment money the money that we call investment money, the discretionary spending, is intense pressure. And it's under intense pressure because of the yellow. And the yellow is composed of what we call mandatory spending, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, interest on the debt. The interest on the debt continues to grow. We're at basically zero interest rates, and it's still $250 billion a year in interest. And I would point out this budget increases spending in Medicaid and Medicare. What it does, only in Washington, is an increase in spending a cut. See, where I'm from, if you got more in each consecutive year, that would not be a cut. That would be an increase. But in Washington, if the increase is not as big as people thought it might be, that's a cut. Well, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So what this does is it slows the increase. But they continue to increase the budgets of these programs.
Part of mandatory spending is Medicare. New York Times editorial board says this about Paul Ryan's proposal on Medicare. It would become a voucher program by 2024 for those now 55 and younger, allowing them to choose between a fixed payment for private insurance and the traditional plan. The problem with this idea is that traditional Medicare wouldn't stay unchanged for long because it will track the sickest patients, become so expensive that most people would be driven to the private plan. The spending cuts in that plan would quickly make it inadequate.
Say a couple of things. First of all, it does not surprise me that the New York Times does not like the Republican budget. I think their editorial page has made their views clear on this Ryan budget and all the other Ryan budgets. I think the bottom line is, first of all, they call it a voucher system. Ever since premium support came out from the Republican side, it's been called a voucher system. It's not a voucher system. Premium support is what federal employees have. It is where there is a system generally managed by the federal government, but a certain part of the premium is paid for. And that's what we have advocated for all along. And what's interesting, and a lot of folks that I talk with haven't heard this, but if you go back to the President Clinton's Medicare Commission in 1998 and 1999, it was headed by Senator John Breaux of Louisiana, a Democrat, and Congressman Bill Thompson, Republican of California. And there was a now famous op-ed for people who follow Medicare reform, and it basically said premium support is the way to go. Premium support is not a voucher system. So premium support is not a voucher system. I have seen journalists lazily call it a voucher system. It's not a voucher system. It's a system that has worked for federal employees. Ask federal employees. Until Obamacare came along, you could have asked members of Congress because they had the same federal employee health care plan, that general structure where you choose within the private market, but it's only private companies that have been allowed to enter the federal employee plan. And that's where the premium support model is, you can see it in use every day.
Let's get to calls. Hildegard is joining us in Georgetown, South Carolina, Republican caller. Go ahead.
My husband and I, we applied for himself under the health care law. We are both in the 60s, and he had to apply for disability because he's a tractor-trailer driver, and he keeps falling asleep on the steering wheel because of his sickness. What they gave us was only family planning. Now, the biggest joke is on them because we don't plan no more family. I hate to say it, but when I think when Osama bin Laden had his last speech on the TV, he said he got a huge surprise for the United States. And I think Obama is the huge surprise. He worked that down to the ground.
Okay, Hildegard. Congressman?
Well, I don't know about your particular health care situation. I will say that and I hear from constituents. I live and represent Central Arkansas, which includes Little Rock. And I can find, I think you can find individuals who have had really bad experiences on this. When the president says that they're not true or made up, he should visit Arkansas. He hasn't visited Arkansas once. He ought to come down. He ought to see Senator Pryor, who voted for it, and some others. Now, you can certainly find people who didn't have health care who now have it. But the problem with Obamacare is, in its pursuit of helping that relatively small percentage, it messed it up for so many other millions. And that's ultimately the point. Whether you don't judge whether this multi-trillion-dollar law is a good law or bad law because you found somebody who was helped. The point is, there are ways to lower cost and expand access to health care without messing it up for everybody that liked what they had. And that is the core problem. And that's before you get into things like, and maybe we'll talk about this, the 30-hour work week, the 50 and above requirement, 50 employees and above requirement under the law, the employer mandate. That's before you get into those and their impact on the job market.
Jack on Twitter says, Representative Griffin shouldn't be talking about reducing debt and spending. Defense increases in this Paul Ryan budget and facilities to large corporations aren't included.
Well, I don't know what subsidies he's talking about. I was looking at some of the facts on our budget, and there's no one that is more corporate welfare, if that's what he's talking about, than Paul Ryan. In fact, he specifically takes that on. We take it on. I don't know if he's been following, but we put out a discussion draft of tax reform in the Ways and Means Committee, of which I'm a member. That was led by now retiring Chairman Dave Camp. And one of the key components of our tax reform is to eliminate a bunch of the provisions that are for special interests, whether they be corporations or whatever, in an attempt to streamline and simplify the tax code. So, I don't see that as a valid point. But in terms of reducing the spending, again, from a Washington perspective, it is a reduction in spending because it's not as much as folks in Washington would want it to be. But in real terms, it's not a reduction. It is a slowing of the growth. And here's the thing. I was talking to one of my staff guys on the way over here. We've been talking about the problem with our debt, the out of balance of our budget for years. We've been talking about this. And we've been talking about the consequences. I think we're already seeing the consequences in lack of, and that's part of the reason we are lagging behind economically. But I just pose this question. Do we really believe that all fundamentals can be the way they are and there be zero impact to spending, zero impact to our economy, that we can just keep on going? I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And there's plenty of blame to go around over the last 10, 20 years or whatever, 30 years, on too much spending. But this president has taken it to the major leagues. Since I've got here, we have reduced spending for the first time since 2 years straight since the Korean War. Yes, that's something to be proud of because we are in a situation where if we don't address this, our interest rates are going to go up. Credit ratings could potentially be lowered. Interest rates go up, which makes housing harder to buy, which makes the economy slow down, which makes job growth more difficult. I mean, this is not a joke. We get so focused on the Washington part of the debate But if we don't fix these fundamental problems, it will impact our jobs and our country and our lives. And let me say this on the defense budget. I would ask the caller, have you been seeing what's going on in other parts of the world? At the end of the day, the number one priority of the federal government is to protect its citizens, the national security. And if you look at if you were looking at the Pac-Man slides from a few minutes ago, or if you look at our budget, we always need to be looking for places to do better and reduce spending. But the autopilot spending is what drives the debt, ultimately. Yes, we always need to be looking everywhere to spend more wisely. No doubt about it. This federal government spends unwisely in many areas. And I have been very vocal about DOD, Department of Defense, having to spend more wisely. There's lots of waste at DOD. I wish the president and others would be more aggressive on that. But I do believe that we need to also be ready to protect this country.
We'll go to Steve next. Hartford, Connecticut, Democratic caller. Hi, Steve.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My question, how long can Congress turn its back on the growing number of Americans who know that simple physics disproves the government's explanation for what destroyed Building 7 on 9/11/2001, and who are demanding a new investigation into the evidence that explosives brought that building down?
Congressman, Steve is part of a group of people that don't believe the investigation into what happened on September 11th, 2001 by the government is adequate. They don't trust what the government has put out. Have you looked into it? Do you want to respond?
Well, I was an American and in America on 9/11, and I've been reading every article and everything I could since that happened. I remember exactly where I was. I saw the planes go into the buildings. I served in Iraq in 2006. I'm still in the Armed Forces. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. With all due respect to this gentleman, I disagree with him.
Okay. Tricia, Warsaw, Indiana, independent caller. Hi, Tricia.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Congressman, I would like to get you to comment real quickly on 2 points, questions that I have. The first place, concerning health care, our insurance was getting to the point where the premiums were going to be affordable very quickly with the increases year after year after year before the Affordable Health Care went into effect. What is to reduce or try to help the situation of the ever-increasing cost of medical health care devices, prescriptions? What is Congress doing to take on that problem? And the second one is concerning the budget, how can we afford, and I know that we need to support the people in Crimea, but how can we afford, if our budget is such a mess and our finances are in such a mess and we're in such a dire state, how can we afford to send money over there when we're trying to find ways to cut from the Americans who need our help?
Sure.
Okay, Tricia.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say take the second one first. It sounds like you believe this, and I certainly believe every single dollar we spend on any type of foreign aid has to be looked at with increased scrutiny. But I think that when you look at foreign aid, there's some that is spent wisely, and there's some that's not. I think that the foreign aid to Israel, for example, that's money well spent. Those investments in our strategic partners' defense inure to our benefit many, many, many times over. So that is actually a good investment. I think, and in that case, we're talking about billions of dollars through an agreement with Israel. In the Ukraine, if you're talking about the package last night, to a large extent, those are what's called loan guarantees, which would not necessarily result in spending. It could, minimal compared to the broader foreign assistance budget. Some of the direct assistance, I think, was in the M, was $150 million with an M, which is certainly a lot of money to me. But put in the broader context of things, I think that is money well spent, considering what is going on in the Ukraine. So I think we have to look at every dollar spent on foreign assistance, and we can't group it all together and say it's all good or it's all bad. You have to look at each individual use and say, is this a good use or not? But again, the entire foreign affairs, foreign assistance budget is about 1%. It is not, certainly we need to spend wisely, but it is not what's driving the debt. I can assure you. In terms of health care and making health care more affordable, a lot of us argue that the reason that some individuals did not have health care before the Affordable Care Act is because certainly there were some that didn't want it. They were young or whatever. But there were a number of people who couldn't afford it. Well, instead of saying we're going to give you access to expensive health care that costs more than it should, and we're going to do that by making other people pay for it and increasing their premiums, what we should have done is look for ways to reduce the cost. By reducing the cost, you automatically increase access. And that's what a lot of us have been talking about. Also giving people more choice. What's being done? Well, we don't have agreement from the president. So a lot of the stuff that we've passed or that we advocate for is not going anywhere as long as this president's in the White House. But, for example, one of the things we've talked about, instead of having 3 or 4 or 5 insurance options in your state where you can't choose an option outside of your state line, we've talked about having interstate competition so that if you're at your home, I think you're in Warsaw, Indiana, if you're there, not only would you have the option of looking at insurance plans in your state, which may be relatively limited in terms of the number of insurance providers, but you could sit back and say, wait a minute, there's a plan in Oregon, there's a plan in California, there's a plan in Connecticut or wherever that fits my particular needs, and we have long advocated for that sort of competition, which a lot of us believe will be one way to help. But there are many. A lot of it too is preventative care. There is a very small percentage of Americans that drive a very large percentage of the health care cost, and that is a well-documented fact. And so there are a number of things we can do, but I think you're absolutely right to be focusing on the cost element, because if we reduce the cost element and then you automatically make health care more accessible.
We'll go to Judy next. Townsville, North Carolina, Republican caller. Hi, Judy. You're on the air with Congressman Tim Griffin, Republican of Arkansas. Go ahead.
Yes, my question is, can he tell me how many presidents in the past have acted like Obama, forcing the government people to take his way or hit the road? And my other question is, when are we going to stop putting up with his lies, deceits, demanding the American people his way or hit the road? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your call. One thing I left out of the last answer, I wanted to the lady in Warsaw, Indiana, specifically mentioned the cost of medical devices. I would point out to her, and there's been a lot written on this, and a lot of Democrats agree with Republicans on this. One of the boneheaded ideas, I get it may have come out of Congress at some point, was this idea of medical device taxes. And eventually it ended up in the Affordable Care Act. I'm not sure if that was whose idea that was ultimately, but it's not a good idea. And what it ultimately does is it raises the cost of medical devices. And we, Republicans and Democrats, have talked about repealing that. At some point, there may have even been some voices at the White House who favored some sort of deal that would repeal that in exchange for something else. So I think there's widespread recognition that raising taxes on medical devices increases the cost and may decrease the research and innovation. As to the last caller, in terms of the look, I think while it is true that all presidents want to use the executive powers given to them, and some more than others push the envelope, I do think that this president has pushed it beyond tearing. I'll give you one example, and this is not even related to Obamacare. Last summer, the administration decided that they would waive the work requirement in the welfare law that was signed into law, I think, in '96 by President Clinton, a bipartisan piece of legislation. And what was interesting is they did it unilaterally. They did it through administrative action without Congress being involved. And a lot of us said, wait a minute, that's not legal. And so when we looked at it, it was interesting because the Obama administration's own lawyers had previously said, when the administration wanted to waive this work requirement, they had previously said in a legal opinion, we don't have the legal ability to do that. If we do that without Congress, we are violating the law. And that was the Obama administration's own attorneys. But at some point, they decided it was something they wanted to do, and they just proceeded with it. We passed a bill in the House Ways and Means Committee to correct that. But that's one example. And then, of course, there's now been it's hard to count, 30-something or whatever it is, administrative changes to Obamacare. I sort of half-jokingly say the individual who has done more to repeal Obamacare is President Obama. He, admittedly, he's done it in little chunks, and he's done it a little bit here, a little bit there. And he's not doing it because he wants to repeal it permanently. I think he's trying to repeal it before the elections temporarily, some of the requirements, so that the elections will go more smoothly for him. That's why these are temporary, a year postponement, an extension here, an extension there. There may be a few of those that they have the administrative power to do without Congress. But I think the vast majority of them are being done with authority and are illegal.
Joe on Twitter asks you, how does the Ryan budget compare with the Ryan-Murray agreement reached in December?
Well, it respects the caps that were set. And and that's the other thing. I think I know the Democrat talking points are to try to demonize Paul Ryan. That's hard for anybody who's ever met Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is one of the nicest, kindest, most genuine, knowledgeable folks that you will meet. Obviously, he was able to work across the aisle and forge a budget. It wasn't perfect, but it was a bipartisan budget. And in a divided town, that's a big deal. He did that last year, but it does respect that.
Would you support a bid by him to head up the Ways and Means Committee?
Well, I am going to stay out of that fight for now. I've got at least one other friend who has.
May I ask who that is?
I think that, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think that Subcommittee Chairman Brady has indicated an interest in it. I don't want to speak for him. I may be mistaken, but I think that's right. But that's something that will happen later on in the year. I am not running for re-election, as you may know. I am running for Lieutenant Governor in Arkansas. So I will not be part of that on the committee, but it has been the honor of a lifetime to serve in Congress, and certainly to serve on the House Ways and Means Committee with Dave Camp, and hopefully we'll get to say a few words about it. camp before I get out of here.
Well, the NPR has this story, since you're running for lieutenant governor. In Arkansas, voters may get a chance to raise the minimum wage in that state. The state has one of the lowest minimum wages in the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, from a federal perspective, I've been very outspoken on minimum wage because we have seen study after study, and they're not even, it's not right-leaning groups. You know, in this town, a lot of times a right-leaning group will say this, left-leaning group will say the opposite. This is an area where there's pretty wide agreement that you have a trade-off with raising the minimum wage. Yes, you may raise the wage for some individuals, but you may also decrease the overall number of jobs. And in fact, we've seen that. I think there was a CBO report out on that recently, which is a nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. They basically came out and said one of the ideas floated by the president, yes, it will give people a little more change in their pocket, but some people will end up with no change in their pocket because it will reduce jobs. So, look, I think ultimately the cure for our fiscal problems, certainly we need to be responsible with our spending, but the cure to our fiscal problems and the cure to the many folks who are unemployed and long-term unemployed is growing the economy.
So on a federal level, are you opposed, but on a state level, do you have a different opinion?
Well, no, I think that in both instances the same principles apply.
Okay. All right. Mylan Burke wants to go back to the Paul Ryan budget on Medicare. He asks this, I'm sorry. In Ryan's budget, do 55 and under no longer have to pay Medicare payroll taxes because of the changes to the system?
I've seen any. No, I think you would still have to pay. Is my understanding, because what you would do is you would still be in Medicare. You would just have an option between traditional Medicare and a premium support model. I would also point out, and he took a lot of ribbing for this after he did it, but Senator Wyden, a Democrat, last Congress, reached out or had been working with Congressman Ryan and endorsed some of these ideas. I think he signed on to a bill with Chairman Ryan and basically saying, hey, some of these ideas on Medicare reform are good ideas. And my position personally has been Medicare is going bankrupt. We know that. That's not debatable. And so I asked myself, what are the options? And I've concluded that the only thing that is completely off the table for me is the status quo. Because the status quo means bankruptcy of Medicare. So when you hear people say, so-and-so, and you'll see the ads, so-and-so wants to change Medicare as we know it. Well, if you're not for changing Medicare as we know it, then you're advocating for the bankruptcy and devastation of Medicare. The only way to save Medicare is to change it. And you don't have to, I wish I had my quotes with me. Senator Lieberman, longtime Democrat vice presidential nominee, became an independent. He and the president in June 2011 basically said that we have to make changes to Medicare. And the bottom line is, I tell people, I am happy to talk about any ideas you have on how to save Medicare. The one thing that is completely unacceptable is to do nothing, is to just say, leave it as it is. Because if you leave it as it is, you have declared war on Medicare. It will go bankrupt, and Pac-Man, as we remember in the graph, will have its way.
Just a couple more minutes left here, so I want to talk to you about the Save American Workers Act. Get your thoughts on that. That is expected in a vote on the House floor this week. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And what would it do?
Yes. So this is Todd Young's bill. Obamacare basically sets a full work week at 30 hours. And last time I checked, 30 hours is not a full work week in American culture or in most cases of American law. In fact, even in 35 hours is a full work week, and they're thinking about moving it to 40. But the Obama administration set a full work week at 30 hours for Obamacare. We had a Stanford expert academic at our committee hearing, and I asked him, I said, where did this 30 hours for a full work week come from? He said, I think they picked it out of the air. So what this would do, it would move it to 40 and make a work week truly 40 hours. Here's the problem. And we had some very insightful hearings on this. The Obama administration, with Obamacare, they professed to, by moving a full work week to 30, their stated goal was to give more people insurance. But what they ended up doing is actually getting people moved to 29 hours because these were part-time people anyway. So they don't have insurance and they're losing their job.
The Huffington Post has a piece where they cite a CBO report that found, in conjunction with the Joint Committee on Taxation, reported that 1 million workers under the Save American Workers Act would lose their work-based insurance policies. Half would be forced into either an ACA plan, Medicaid, or S-CHIP. The other half wouldn't get any insurance at all. It gets worse. Due to the provision loosening the penalty for not complying with the law, the deficit would go up by $74 billion.
Yeah, so what I would do, I would contrast that to what we heard in our hearing from a panel. The bottom line is we had folks testifying, witness after witness, talking about how they had to lay people off. So the alternative, because of all of that, all the benefits that came with hitting 30 hours a week, and basically what they said was, we had people that we were providing some assistance to, and they had a job. Now, because of this, they're going to be without a job. And so you have an instance where you're trying to help this person a little bit, and the unintended consequence is to get them laid off. So I think if you peel back the numbers, you will see that this has actually hurt jobs. Plus, if they want 30, why don't they move it to 20? Why don't they move it to 10? I mean, in what world is 30 hours a full work week? I grew up thinking it was 40. I never heard anyone say 40. And if they think 30 is helping, why don't they make it 10 hours a week? Well, there's a reason. They tried to get away with whatever they could get away with. No one would buy 20 hours. I don't buy that 30 hours is a full-time work week. We know that that traditionally 40 hours, beyond 40 hours, and you get overtime. This is what people, I think, dislike about Washington. Washington will tell you the sky is red when we all see it's blue. Washington says 30 hours, that's a full work week. And every American looks around going, 30 hours is a full work? Oh, well, for the purposes of this law. You know, let's have a little common sense.
We'll leave it there. Congressman Tim Griffin, Republican of Arkansas. Thank you, sir, for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Coming up.